A little poke might be just what the doctors ordered to cure the United States of the mumps and measles virus. It's back and traveling fast from coast to coast. Yet, two problems stand in the path of a cure: low vaccination rates and limited communication of doctors and parents. My point is that in current years, vaccination rates have dropped significantly after numerous medical scares. The significant drop in vaccinations has allowed disease to both re-enter the United States and spread rapidly in populated areas like New York and California. Texas is among those as well. And every day a surplus of information is released to parents about the vaccinations, their harms, and their benefits. Such a surplus that many parents find it hard to find the truth as to what they should do to protect their child and keep them safe. I have compared multiple news articles and reports from across the nation to provide you a well-rounded analysis of the current media coverage on this, along with what's the truth and what's not. Prior to discussing fake news, we must first cover background information and the events leading up to this present-day situation of our mumps and measles outbreaks. Then we will discuss the story's media coverage and the effects of language and the effects of restricted details and how it affects and influences our perception of disease outbreak. So let's get started. Let's begin by briefly laying out the coverage of each news article about the reintroduction of mumps and measles into the U.S. To begin, the mumps and measles virus is spreading rapidly in large U.S. cities across the coast after its complete eradication in the early 2000s due to a vaccination called the MMR vaccine. Spreading along our nation's coast, cities from New York to California are feeling the effects of the measles. And a current outbreak of the mumps and measles virus is the largest we've had since the early 2000s, when, again, it was completely eradicated. So what exactly is mumps and measles? Measles is a disease that targets infants, young children, and those with weakened immune systems, such as adults and elderly. It also, when infected, individuals exhibit symptoms of fever, cough, cold-lick spots, rash, runny nose, and sore throat, according to the CDC. The virus also lasts 2 to 3 weeks with several different phases. The last phase, however, makes it to where you are contagious for 8 days. So you're contagious 4 days prior to your rash and 4 days post-rash. Luckily for us, though, the mumps and measles virus, although lethal, does have a cure, and it's a preventative. The mumps and measles virus has a preventative called the MMR vaccine, which stands for mumps, measles, and rubella. This vaccine gives full immunity against the virus and protects those from becoming infected. The vaccine was created in 1967 and has allowed the virus to be completely eradicated after its wide use, according to the Centers for Disease and Control Prevention 2019. Vaccines are widely misunderstood by the general public due to our lack of medical understandings. So staff writer Micah O'Schreider explains in his article titled Vaccines for Kids and Adults that vaccines are the contained or killed organisms of weakened germs or a part of germs that causes disease. This stimulates the immune system to produce bodies of protein called antibodies to take specific antigens or foreign particles like microorganisms and viruses that attack the body. That, therefore, equips the body to fight off those diseases. Schroeder, 2019. With a disease that's preventable via vaccination, why are we experiencing such mixed messages as to whether or not we should vaccinate our children? First, let's look at media coverage. The coverage broke on March 6, 2019, when Fox News Channel reported on a committee Senate report. The report panel showed the connection between health benefits and the public, and it touched upon current events and the outbreaks along the coast, specifically in New York City. CNN then followed suit, publishing an article May 25th titled "The Two Viral Outbreaks Plaguing the Country." And this article expanded upon the ideas of miscommunication between adults and medical professionals as to why this outbreak is happening, along with the plague clearly being mumps and measles. They stated that 2 outbreaks in our country are, quote, more than 800 cases of the measles, and the second outbreak as a plague of misinformation, according to Guthrie, who works for CNN. This report also is the first to claim that parents are hesitant to vaccinate children and have created a weakened herd immunity where at least 93 to 95% of the population must be vaccinated or immune to disease in order to effectively protect our most valuable citizens. Herd immunity is important because if we don't have it, that means that the people who can't have the vaccine, such like if you're allergic to it or if it's against your religious beliefs, you now are more vulnerable to catching it because the people around you are not immune. Finally, they closed their arguments by stating that this vaccine, in fact, does not cause autism or sickness, which is an increased threat to children. The Washington Post vastly differed in coverage of the story and reported on an anti-vaxxers, which is what people who are against anti-vaccinations are deemed, rally. The article cited people who were both pro and anti-vaccinations, and the leading anti-vax rally, Big Tree, who is a guy famous for, what are they called? Yeah, media articles. He was stated saying New Yorkers are being put at risk by the spread of misinformation, including children who are too young to get vaccinated or those who have medical conditions that make vaccination impossible. In an effort to combat the rising anti-vaccination movements, New York has implemented summons up to $1,000 and have begun using propaganda to educate parents of the safety of vaccinations. The articles published by the U.S. News and CDC, although discussing a recent rise of measles, didn't focus on the politics of it. In fact, they referred to evidence about vaccines and vaccine suggestions rather than the problems politically with vaccinations. They also looked at the current outbreak numbers across states in the U.S. All right. While all articles presented information on vaccines and viruses, each was riddled with differing facts and viewpoints. Biases and fake news were used in all articles that I found and researched in order to change the perception of the audience. A prime example of a bias is an introduction of the reporter's opinions into the news articles. In every article that I read, some form of bias was present. Even though at times you were unaware that you may be being misled or led to believe one thing or not due to slight biases, or at times a very bold bias that you caught on to immediately. Most of these were leaning towards pro-vaccination, by the way. For example, the article published by CNN by author Guthrie used words choices such as plague, fake news, and misinformation, along with facts that supported only their pro-vaccination stance. They also concluded the report by using a personal plea of, I urge parents to get the right information and vaccinate their children. Guthrie, 2019. CNN, although normally having a left-leaning bias, put that aside in an effort to persuade readers to vaccinate their children regardless of politics and only based on the experts' opinions in the field. Whereas U.S. News and the CDC's reporters chose to give audiences only facts based on statistics, data across the U.S., and factual information from doctors who have been studying the mumps and measles vaccine and its safety. They also suggested that the benefits outweigh the harms when choosing to vaccinate a child. The CDC report was overall the least biased of all articles and compared breakout rates across multiple years with suggestions as to why they occurred, rather than immediately pointing the finger at parents, like CNN, Fox, and Washington Post all did. An overall theme in the articles published by CNN, Fox, and the Washington Post is labeling of parents that aren't comfortable with vaccinations as anti-vaxxers. These authors also tended to influence the public to believe in facts that they have elaborated on and only given details based on their pro-vaccination beliefs. These authors also exhibited biases, though the officials they chose to quote and continually blame on those who aren't for vaccinations for creating an unsafe health situation. In conclusion, news has a tendency to contain biases, whether subtle or boldly demonstrated. We must be careful to double-check our facts before deciding what to do and who to believe. After listening to me discuss the current issues of vaccinations, I hope you are all able to form your own opinions and better identify misleading information in our media. Whether or not the doctor ordered it, you do have the right to choose whether or not to vaccinate your child. I hope that you can take this information and form your own idea of what's right for you. And, if not, consult your health professional for better information. Thank you.